My name is Elizabeth Schlemer, and this is one of the series of videos for IME 143, Facilities Planning and Design at Cal Poly San Luis Obispo. In this video, we'll be talking about defining the problem, which is the first step in the systematic approach. So again, we need to remember that as in all of the things we do, it's very important to have excellent engineering, but also completely understand the context in which you are doing a design. In this video, we're going to talk a lot about the context. To remind us of facilities planning and design, we have two main sections, the design of the facility and the location. And then within the design of the facility, we have facility systems design, layout planning, and material handling. We're going to be talking about in the layout planning, layout design portion of this facilities planning kind of process. And we're going to be referring to this systematic approach and we're going to be looking at the very first step, which is defining or redefining the objectives of the project you're working on. This is to ask the question, what are you doing and why? So this is a set of sort of questions to ask yourself as you're trying to create a project objective or goals. And so the first question is, why did they invite you to work with them? Why did the company invite you to work with them? What was their presenting problem? Did they have in mind some reason? They said, oh, we're running out of space, or did they say there's a lot of lost parts, or they have some reason for having you there. It could just be that they enjoy working with students, which is fine too, but you might want to also just investigate what are they hoping to accomplish from the process. And then this leads into this next question of once you give them a solution, how will they know it's good? Like, will they look at it and say, oh, this is really good because the flow is very clear, or because there seems to be excess capacity, or because you freed up a lot of space. But in your mind, you'd want to know what the answer to that question will be at the end of the project, so that you can design it into the metrics that you're going to use to determine if the solutions are good or not. And then the next question is, you really want to know what they want to fix. So what is it they're wanting? They're wanting more space, not how they're going to fix it. So really in the idea of engineering design, one of the very most important things the discipline an engineer brings is really understanding what is going on and not exactly how to fix it right away. Because you can jump into solutions very quickly and that might not be the right solution. So we try to have a discipline around this particular question. Know what they want to fix, but don't jump into how to fix it. The next is to understand their constraints. So they might say, we have this big crane, like this picture, we have this big crane in the middle of a facility. We can't move that. And it's really good to note that, to say, oh, okay, I see it'd be hard to move that. But what they're really saying in some of the constraints are, it's too expensive to move, but if moving it creates an incredible positive benefit to the company, it might be justified to move it. So you don't want to argue with them right in that moment when they present a constraint, but also know that it's possible to override most of the constraints that people have if you have enough benefit to offset the cost. So take their information, but note that actually it's not always completely true that it's a absolute constraint. The next is, what's the scale of the project? So whenever we do facilities design, it's about locating items within space. And so you need to really understand what are the limits. And one of the good things about facilities design is often the boundaries of the problem have to do with the physical boundaries of the thing that you're designing. So you really need to know what it is you're designing. What are the physical boundaries? And this relates to scope. Now, it can be redesigning a work cell, like over in the left-hand corner there, just redesigning a small space, organizing it so a few people who are working in there are more efficient. The second thing you can do is within a building, so departments or work cells, where they're placed within a building. And then at an even larger scale, on the right-hand side, you could actually design a whole campus, like the buildings on a piece of land. That would be at the largest scale. But really understanding what is the scale of the thing that you're working on is quite important. The next question, or the last question in this set, is what is the production capacity of the facility? So it's super duper important of understanding how big this facility is. And of course, I'm referring to a manufacturing facility. Now, there's other things we design, like office buildings or something like that. That's going to be a little bit different question than production capacity. But often we're working in manufacturing. So looking at how many widgets, how many things are we producing each year? And that really dictates a lot of the sort of the sophistication, well, I can't even speak, of the design. So if we're just making one or two a day, that's probably a process that's pretty hand driven, that can be a little bit more flexible, that workers can be doing multiple things. But if you're making 10,000 a day, then that might put you on the side of automation, like this incredible picture of all these robots. That is a very different kind of production facility. So really having an understanding of what you're dealing with initially is important. And then the next thing is, so having an idea of what the goals of the project are is super important. But it's also important to visit the location. So I have some suggested questions that you want to make sure you'll answer on your first visit. And these are definitely questions that I will be asking you in your project teams. So it's good for you to remember these are the things that I'm going to be asking. So know the client. What stories do they tell? So one of my favorite examples is J. Carroll, which is a screen printing business in town. One of the stories they told, for some strange reason, was that their door into their lobby never closed all the way, and it really bothered them that never happened. It felt like it was a kind of an indication of a shoddy enterprise. So what we did is we actually investigated what are ways to help them with that particular thing. Now, it doesn't seem like it's part of facilities design, but obviously it's important to the client. So really understanding what they're doing. Another example is we worked with Slow Roasted Coffee, and this was actually quite a long time ago when there was a strike in grocery stores, and so their sales were very, very low because of this strike. And we really helped them understand how they were being impacted on that, but also helped them to focus ahead on what could be possible for them. So it was really, really gratifying in that case to actually help them have hope about their processes. And of course, they're still a functioning company now. The next is, do they have a strategic plan? So like Cal Poly has a strategic plan, and almost every company does, big company does. So I would just make sure you go online and see what are they about? What do they say they do? And related to that is who their customer is. Who is it that they're serving? Really having a deep understanding of the customer base. Now, some companies sell to other companies, so you'll need to know who is that? Who are they selling to? You'll ask them, who is your main customer? Where do you have multiple customers, or are they just particular types of customers? And then really take field notes. And I don't know if you know what an ethnographer is, but it's somebody who is like an anthropologist, like goes into a community and really takes notes and understands what's going on in the particular place. So I would do that, like look for what are the genders of the people that I'm talking to? What are the ethnicities? How do people dress in this place? What are their offices like? So you can get a whole bunch of clues about the company and about the company culture by just observing what's going on. And I'll ask you about that. Did you have any observations or see any patterns? You need to understand their organization. So a family-owned company is very different than a large conglomerate. And so really understanding that. Also, if they have any secret processes, like things that maybe they didn't tell you about right away, or that seem to be something that it's a closely guarded secret, it's good to know that. And then related to that is offer to do a non-disclosure agreement if they feel that they're nervous about giving you information, offer that up to them. Then the last thing you'll need to know is who's your contact information, and also how are you going to get access to the facility? Do you have to call somebody ahead of time, or can you just show up? And then the sort of related to that, warn them that you will be asking for cost data because it will help you do a better job, and that they don't necessarily have to give that to you. So all of those questions really have to do with if there's an existing facility and you're visiting it. Some of you might be in projects that have no existing facility, maybe a startup. So your process, you actually only need two pieces of information in order to do a really good facility design for a startup. The first thing is, what is the product and the process to make that product? And then the second is, what's the desired production volume? So a picture here of this blender, that is how, like, whatever the product is that you're making for this startup, you will kind of need a drawing. And then from that drawing, you'll need to sort of know how these things are made. Now, even on this picture, you probably could figure out, well, how to make those plastic parts are probably injection molding. There's some screws there, there's some wiring. So you'll know, you can figure out then how to make it. But then the question comes, are we going to make it, or are we going to buy these products? And so each of these SKUs, which stands for stock keeping unit, you'll need to do a make versus buy analysis on. Should we make it or should we buy it? Once you do that, you'll know all the processes you need in the facility, and you'll be able to do some capacity analysis and then lay out the facility. So it sounds very simple, but there's a lot of things that go into designing a facility, but you really only need these two pieces of information.